Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirshanamaham. Namaste everyone. Welcome to our study of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, Ch13 Vibhaga Yoga, the yoga of discrimination between the known and the knower, the field and the knower of the field, Prakriti and Purusha. How to disentangle the two that has got so seriously mixed up. And that is the cause of this cycle of being born again and again. So, over the last 2 weeks, we have been trying to draw up a model of the mind space. And we did develop that a little bit more during the retreat over the weekend. You will notice that we did not record the recordings of the last Thursday's class is not available online because there was some issue with the quality of the recording. But we are repeating this, revising those ideas so we don't be much missed. But I think we have come to a place where we now have a visual pictorial representation, a framework on which we can stitch the various ideas to see how they are interrelated. When we started this chapter 13 and the notes that I had shared with you, you had seen that I had given up one verse for every page and then given a little box in which we are supposed to capture the idea that is there in the sutras in some pictorial form. I think now you should be able to start constructing that. While I'm doing this here on the tablet, it will be a good idea for you to do it yourself, to go through that exercise. Unless you go through that exercises, the ideas don't get clarified easily. So, we are interested in this verses 7 to 11, which are the disciplines to be practiced, jnana, as Sri Krishna describes them, starting with amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, shanti, rajavam, etc. And we wanted to understand these, plus so many other disciplines are taught throughout the Bhagavad Gita, in almost every chapter. What is the general idea and behind those disciplines? And if we get that right, then you'll find that you will understand why those things are prescribed. And even though you might not remember each idea separately during your everyday work and everything, but you will have a general idea what to do and what is conducive for spiritual growth and what is detrimental to spiritual growth. Because these teachings were taught long time back, and in our modern age and time, the world has so much changed. There are so many things in situations where we will end up where you would not find an exact explanation given or a prescription given or sadhana given in the Gita because those situations are not there. For example, in this age, artificial intelligence and all those type of things, or work situation, you'll find that those ideas would not be discussed in the Gita. So how would you make a decision? How would we make a decision? What is to be done? What is morally and ethically right? What is spiritually conducive and what is not? So that is something we hope that the drawings that we are discussing would help us explain there. Let us pick that up. Quickly draw the sketch, that framework, and we'll look at these two verses that are just above here to understand how those ideas can be locked down there. All right, so here we are. We said our drawing of the multiple dimensions of our personality or being can be put into three stages. The physical one is what you call the gross. Subtle is the mind space, causal, and above that is the Atman, that is beyond the three states, beyond the, and so that is represented here, which is the source of all intelligence, consciousness, and everything. That is the eternal thing. This box that is there, that is made of what is called Prakriti, nature, made of the three gunas. So you've got Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. They combine and recombine, creating this whole universe, galaxies, solar systems, planets. Every entity is a combination of these three gunas, according to the Sankhya philosophy. And internally, the individual that we are, the physical body, the subtle body, that all are three constitute of that. So we were very much interested in the mind space, because that mind actually is the problem. When it is not, it has been polluted or contaminated, or we will say when there are too many vrittis. And so that is the mind. And we discussed in quite detail in the retreat, over the last two classes, how any energy coming through any of the senses or from top also, when it enters a mind space, it creates what are called the vrittis, little whirlpools, depending on the direction they come from. So that is another idea we evolved a little bit. So if you say the natural level of the mind is up to here somewhere, and when that mind engages with something at a lower level, means some sense object, then it creates a whirlpool that will be represented as a clockwise, which binds us. And so constantly the world is bombarding us with various sensations, and these whirlpools are being created, and some are very strong and some are weak, but overall they keep on adding with each other. And when the sense object disappears, like you're not seeing that same thing again, then these vrittis, so these are called the vrittis, which are represented as whirlpools here, and they have a direction. They have a direction here, so it's like a vector in physics, okay? Direction plus magnitude. Some vrittis will be very strong, and some could be quite mild. What we also know is that if we have the repeated experience of the same thing, so revising, reading the same thing, seeing the same thing, undergoing the similar experience, they constantly reinforce the earlier vrittis, and that's what we call sometimes as learning. When we're going through a learning process, for example, a child sees something and asks the mother, and mother tells once, and then he sees the same thing again and again and again, or he repeats A for apple, B for whatever, and that's how they memorize the alphabets and words and sentences and things. That storing all those vrittis in the subconscious mind, let us represent that as a dot line like that, okay, they are called samskaras, impressions. And this is how the mind becomes conditioned. And what we call knowing or learning is basically all these vrittis that have been stored in our mind. The more they are contained, the more learned we are supposed to be like that. That's what happens when the vrittis are generated by input from the external world. It's a good model there. Now, when the same mind is directed inwards, inverted, then it also creates a vritti, and the vritti would be in the anti-clockwise direction, or it will be uplifting, moving up. And that could be doing japa or meditation or puja or something spiritual, internal, connecting to our higher self in there. So that also adds up. And those things also leave their samskaras in the mind. And of course, when we came into this world, we did not come with a blank slate. So we brought so many samskaras from our previous lifetimes. Imagine what is contained in there in our mind. And that's why the real sadhana boils down to purification of this mind, cleansing of the vrittis. And when we have reached a state where the upward direction or the spiritual direction of this vrittis becomes so strong to overpower the downward direction. In other words, the nivritti, which is upwards. Okay, this is nivritti, and down one is called pravritti. Okay, so when you are vigilant and we are following the path of nivritti, then we are generating this spiritual samskaras, let us say. And when they become sufficiently strong, that means the resultant, the summation, becomes so strong that you have a very solid upward direction vritti, like that. And they overcome, and at the same time, you are not doing certain things. Okay, so those things that were dragging the mind down, these are the don'ts in spiritual life. Don't do this, don't do that, because those are the harmful vrittis. And when the upward direction, the positive direction, that's not that. The positive direction becomes so strong and overpowers the negative direction, then we say that that person's character is good. Spiritual, those spiritual traits or behaviors or thoughts or words and deeds become very natural to that person. Until then, there's always a danger of slipping down when the lava samskaras can grab us, and when we are exposed to the external world where something can awaken these lava samskaras. So that's why you'll find that part of the discipline means living in solitude or keeping away from such environments and people that can arouse those negative vrittis in the mind. And on the other side, satsang, living in solitude, contemplation, holy company, those are the environments that we seek, or disciplines we seek, to ensure that we are in the safe space, safe spiritual space, so to say. Okay, so this sort of gives an idea what really happens in our mind space as we interact with the external world and the internal world. With respect to that, now let us review these disciplines that are taught there. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, shantir, arjavam, acharyo upasanam, saucham, sthairyam, atma vinigraha. So, a quick look at those. So, what are these? Humility, not boasting about oneself. Adambhitvam, not proclaiming one's own virtues. Virtues, of course, here are not, whatever one excels in. Ahimsa means non-violence. Shanti, there should be in there. Shanti means forbearance. Arjavam, straightforwardness or sincerity in whatever we do. Acharya upasanam, actually the meaning is acharya upasanam. Acharya is a spiritual teacher, it could be a person, whatever is the source of that positive energy, knowledge. Upa means nearby, asanam means sitting down or approaching. So the idea is that as a student will approach a spiritual teacher with due humility for that knowledge. Saucham means cleanliness. It means not only the physical cleanliness of taking bath and all that, but also mental cleanliness, attachment, anger, and all those things are to be removed. Sthairyam, steadfastness in the spiritual path, and atma vinigraha, control of the body in the organs. So these are the some of the disciplines are there. Let us see how we can put those ideas in here briefly. So if I were asking you a question, why is the teacher, why is Sri Krishna asking us to practice amanitvam, adambhitvam? So amanitvam, humility. When somebody is arrogant and not humble, then that particular behavior would create an undesirable vritti in the mind. And that's why one should not do that. So when somebody is not humble, basically they reinforce this whole identity of the ego. So here, this is the trap. This is all made of Prakriti. Okay, and it has got a sense of I am plus mine. Mine are things out here. House, car, money, position, or it could be something to do with the physical body, beauty, strength, and one can be proud of that. Or it could be the qualities of the mind, somebody is well educated, sharper and brighter and smarter than that. And therefore, all these type of things can create a sense of pride in this individuality, that this entity, this I am, it reinforces that. And therefore, it goes to promote the continuity of this individuality. So that would be like, if there's a wave in the ocean, okay, then that wave, when you are, becomes brighter, higher and taller. But the whole game is that you should become less and less and less, and it should ultimately disappear. So in a humble person, the sense of I is less. He gives importance to others, respect to others, and all those things. Doesn't go around proclaiming his own virtues, doesn't seek to be recognized, to be observed, to be watched, to be all this, what do you call this nowadays? Social influences or whatever they are there. The idea is that, hey, the world, look at me, watch me, take note of me. Such a person, a spiritual person, has absolutely no interest to expose himself to the vulgar eyes of the society and the world. And they seek their own privacy, so that the world is not there to disturb them. They don't share what they experience. If there are any spiritual experiences, they don't go around telling others about those things. It is a spiritual life that is, which they safeguard, protect, don't talk about too much. If they have anything, they will only go to the spiritual teacher and discuss something if they need some clarification about any particular experience. Otherwise, they'll never talk about that. So that type of, though that is a quality that is necessary in the spiritual life. It's a journey of the alone to the alone. And you don't want a crowd to follow that. There'll be other, in I think verse 10 or 11, those teachings are there. Adambhitvam, unpretentiousness, similar. Ahimsa, non-violence. So this box that I'm showing you is one individual. Imagine there is another individual, and everyone is a whirlpool like this. So when we interact with people, and in that interaction, we can do good to them, help them. Help them would mean helping them in the spiritual journey, that which promotes a spiritual well-being. And so when you do that, then you are really apparently helping that person, but really helping your own self. That should be the attitude. Because from the perspective of the ocean, he is all the waves. And God realization in this analogy means realizing that I consciousness of the ocean. Aham Brahmasmi. When the ocean says I am, it means all the waves are included in me. But at the level of the wave, when we look around here, then we see the differences. And that's where we see the differences between good and bad, right and wrong, black, white, brown, different nationality, culture, all the external things we see. We don't see the substance that's inside all of us, the one behind the many. But if you understand what the spiritual life is about, it is about integrating this little ego into the ego of the cosmic, the universal ego. And so the disciplines that are there, they will say, if you want to be, ultimately be the ocean, then start behaving like the ocean. That means try to feel that oneness with everyone. And that is really the basis behind the disciplines, the moral and ethical ones, which we talked 2 weeks back, oneness of all beings. And when we try to assert that in our behavior, in our thought, word, and deed, it comes out as kindness and compassion and love and forgiveness and all those things that reinforce that oneness, the integrative power. In nature, you'll find there's 2 forces always playing around. One is always taking you to the center, the centripetal force. Another one is taking you away, centrifugal force. Inwards, spiritually, nivritti, outwards, pravritti. In mathematics, you might say that is integration. This is differentiation. And so Prakriti, it has a tendency to take out. The word Prakriti itself means the differentiated. And so Advaita and all the spiritual sadhana is always trying to take us to the center. In the center, when we reach the center, we find that we are connected to everything. And that is what self-realization, God realization, or Sri Krishna says in chapter 2, Sthita Prajna, to be established in the wisdom or experience of our identification with the Supreme Universal Being, Paramatman, or Brahman. So, Ahimsa, Shanti. Shanti, why would that be? Shanti means forbearance. So, Sri Ramakrishna has said, forbear, forbear, forbear. And in Vedanta, this is a spiritual discipline called Titiksha. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikar purvakam. Putting up or with all forms of suffering that will come without trying to redress them, without trying to sort that out. They will come to you because according to our karma, that's how you will take it. I have done this something and now it's being undone. So I will carefully, patiently forbear with it, but will not react so that I create another vritti for which I will have to pay the price later in another life or later in this life. So forbearance, forbearance, forbearance. There is a beautiful Gita, another form. There are so many Gitas. It's called Yati Gita. Yati is a sannyasi. Swami Vivekananda, when he used to travel as an itinerant monk, he used to carry a copy of that Yati Gita. And so there, the discipline of the sannyasin is just to forbear whatever comes across. Don't react, don't respond even. Just walk out the karma and say, well, one more is done, over with. And I'm happy that that has been removed out of my mind. That has been, as I had sown, so now I have reaped, and that's it, type of thing. So that is the approach in spiritual life. So in a person's life, so many things will come. Many times you will not be able to relate why certain suffering has come your way. And you ask God, why has this come? I have been so nice. I never did any harm to anyone. Well, that is this life is only one link of the chain. There are many, many links. And if one is a spiritual person striving for mukti and God's grace is coming, then he will try to unwind and undo all those binding forces from previous lifetimes. And sometimes they can be quite intense. And so one has to be patient, understanding that suffering is a form of God's grace. Holy Mother says, suffering is the form of God's compassion. Doesn't make sense logically. We are happy when good things come to us. When suffering comes, we think God has abandoned us. But on the other hand, we are always asking for him to free us from the cycle of samsara. So if he really takes us our prayer seriously, then he said, okay, let me finish up all your samskar, all your karma, prarabdha, everything in this lifetime. And that could come in some form of intense suffering. It could be some serious disease and all that. But along with that, the understanding also will come that, okay, whatever was there, that is being worked out. Let me quietly, patiently put up with this. And when it's all finished, then I don't need to return. Sri Ramakrishna says, gives a beautiful example. He says, an elephant has got a tendency to make itself dirty. You give him a nice wash, next thing he'll pick up so much dust and throw it on his own body. But if you give him a nice bath and then immediately after the bath, you put him inside the stable where the elephant is, there's no dust, then he will remain clean. So likewise, the elephant of this mind has got a tendency to cleanses itself through japa and meditation. And the next day it goes on the world and collects the dust of the world and dirties itself. But right at the last moment, just before one is about to depart this body, if at that time the name of the divine comes, that's the final bath, and one leaves from this world, then one is not dirty, one is pure at that time. So he gives an example like that. So Shanti. So I might want to just digress there. Normally you have this Shanti mantras, mantras that we chant before any undertaking to pacify everything around us so that the world does not disturb us while we engage in our prayer, in our puja, in all anything, any undertaking. And we say the word Shanti 3 times. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And I do not know whether you know why these 3 times, why not just once. Let me just run over that because this could be something relevant here. Spiritual life, most of the time when we sit down, we are able to sit down quietly, but then the world keeps on coming and disturbing us and dragging our mind away. So there are 3 types of distractions, and they're called Adhyatmik, Adidevik, Adibhautik. Adhyatmik, pertaining to oneself. Adibhautik, other beings. Other beings, could be family members, people at work and all that, disturbing us in one way or the other. So those are other beings. And Adidevik, forces of nature. So what we are saying, we are praying to all these energies. It can be sometimes personalized as, the god of rain and wind and all those things. But basically, we are trying to pacify all these forces around us so that they are calm, they don't disturb us. What are the forces of nature? Let's start with that. This could be cyclone and flood and drought, and could be earthquakes, it could be fire and all those that is out there. And suppose something like that is happening, cyclone is raging outside, there's a big drought, there's a flood. It's very, very difficult to meditate at that time. So when nature is very, very calm and conducive, then we are not distracted by and disturbed by that. Other beings, it could be wild animals in the forest, it could be wild animals in the society, people, thieves, robbers, people who will hit you for nothing on the roadside, could be people at work, your colleagues, your boss, it could be people in their family, husband, wife, children, whoever is their relatives, all they come under the category of Adi Bhautik. Adhyatmik, that is pertaining to your own self, your own physical health, your mental health, anxiety, worry, tension, all those things. These 3 come, these are called Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, and that's why we repeat Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. So when you repeat that, you should, that idea, what we have just discussed here, should also come to your mind. Otherwise, you just repeat mechanically without any meaning. Meaning must come. Shabda has got an artha. Artha has to be accompany the word. Otherwise, it's an empty word, meaningless word, like we say. So if you understand these things, then when we pray, the prayer should have that feeling, the bhava, as they say. Let the forces of external nature don't disturb me. Let all beings around me be at peace. That's why before we go into our meditation, we pray for the welfare of all beings, send out our prayers for their good, and also insulate ourselves that they don't disturb us. And Adhyatmic, of course, means you take good care of your own physical health, your mental health. Don't stress and strain yourself so much that and do things that will disturb you and unsettle you. So you have to really prepare ourselves for this exercise, the spiritual discipline. If we are careless about all these things, then you'll find that our spiritual practices are constantly being disturbed by these forces of nature. Nature, externally or our own self. So, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti means forbearance. Forbear. So most of the time we can't change the forces or things around there. People could be there. Boss is not so nice. People might be not so friendly in family. So what do? You can't run away. You need the job, you need to remain in the family and all those things. You can't leave the particular country where there's a drought or flood or this and that. So at that time, one has to develop that fortitude to maintain one's balance. Lose that balance, then it's difficult to continue our spiritual practice. Arjavam. So Arjavam means straightforwardness or sincerity. That means there should not be any duplicity of mind. Sri Ramakrishna would give a lot of emphasis to this. He would look out for youngsters and say, somebody came, he would say, is that particular person guileless or not? Crookedness of mind, chalaki, too smart, worldly smart, telling lies and managing things, type of durbuddhi, we call. Buddhi is intelligence. When it's applied in a wrong way, it's called durbuddhi. And when it's applied in the proper way, it's called sadbuddhi. So you find people out there in the world apparently very smart, able to achieve things in not proper ways, yet have success, like money, rise in position. Nowadays, you'll see so many of such people out there, and you wonder sometimes, oh, they live such a life where they do all the wrong things, and they are the ones who are having a grand time. And somebody who is straightforward and honest and doesn't tell lies, well, he doesn't get a promotion, he doesn't make much impression with the, it's not so worldly wise successful. And sometimes people lose faith in these truths, even though Satyam eva jayate said, in the scriptures, truth always triumphs. But if you ask some young boys, young student, well, what do you think? Do you believe in this? And they'll come. And we did that. They said, oh, no, it's very difficult. If you are honest, then you get nowhere in life. And we'll see those who are dishonest and take to means that are not very noble, they are materially very well. That's why, so if somebody is very spiritually sensitive, then they would not think in this way. For them, the thinking would be, as Christ says, what does it befit a person to lose his soul and to gain the whole world and lose his soul? That means materially and all, financially, one can be very, very well off, but they've sold this soul to the devil, so to say. Another person is very, very spiritual, upright and honest. Maybe he not materially so well off, but the spiritual capital is very, very good. And that is what we want. So always discriminate What we are looking for is spiritual wealth, not material wealth. And the path of nivritti is not easy. The world out there is really going out in the pravritti, and it has a tendency to drag us in that direction if you're not very, very careful. Friends will say, hey, come this way, it's all right. Everyone is doing it. So what's wrong with that? And you have to be prepared to be a lone ranger, an outlier, if you are working in the spiritual journey. That's why Shri Krishna says, maybe 1 in 1,000 takes up the spiritual journey. So don't expect many people to be accompanying you or supporting you, but that is the way to ultimate freedom. Ahimsa Shantir Arjam Acharya Upasanam. So here the mind, Acharya, so ultimate teacher is not the person who might be giving you the knowledge, but the divine that dwells in the heart of all beings. Satchidananda, or the Supreme Being, alone is the spiritual teacher. Sri Ramakrishna will continuously in the Gita will say, he might bring that knowledge, make that knowledge available to a person through some human channel, but God alone is the Guru, not the individual. An individual should never appropriate to themselves that role of the Guru. At best, they can say we are only conduits through which the knowledge flows, and it is our wonderful privilege to be chosen to be of some service to another jiva and be an instrument in the hands of the divine. That is the only goodness he should feel about himself, that I am fortunate that I am a channel through which some good work is being done by the divine. But he should not himself at any time appropriate him that role, I am the teacher, this guru, that guru. That is spiritually very, very harmful also, because along with that comes an ego that I am the teacher, I am the supplier of knowledge, I need to be respected, I need to be honored and all that. And that's, again, we get caught in that same ego. And the spiritual ego is far much worse than the material ego there. So those are the warnings in the path of spirituality. Acharya Upasanam Saucham. Saucham, purity of this mind. So, Shuddhi. Shuddha means piva. Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the mind. The whole ball game of all this is purification of the body, mind, and soul. So, what does that mean here? Okay. Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the purity. This is also taught as one of the disciplines in the Yama and Niyama in the Yoga Sutras. Saucha. Acharya Upasanam, Saucham is again taught here. So it means at 3 levels. Physical purity means, having a bath, wearing clean clothes and all that. Mental purity is even more important than the physical purity. And what are the impurities in the mind? Anger is one of the main ones. Actually, there are 2 most serious ones. When Arjuna asked the question that, okay, to Arjuna, as to Sri Krishna is asking, all these things you are telling about the Atman that's inside me, all that is very nice, but why is it that I do not experience myself as the Atman? And Sri Krishna says, oh, it is all these vrittis that have been created in your mind that cover the light of intelligence or consciousness that is inside us. It's like a mirror that has been covered with all this dirt and dust there. And of all those various types of dusts that are there, dirt that are there, that pollute the mind, there are 2 he talks about, singles out 2 of them. What are they? Anyone out there? Students of the Gita?
Anger.
Anger.
And arrogance.
Arrogance. Don't guess.
No.
Anger is one. There's a sutra there. Shankar,
Sorry, Swamiji, what is it?
what are the two enemies Sri Krishna says?
Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada,
Yeah.
Matsarya.
Yeah, those are the 6 Ch13, 6 enemies are there. Kama esha, Krodha esha. Remember the verse? Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajogun samudbhava, Mahashano, Mahapapma, Vidyena, Miha Vairinam. Vairinam means enemies. These are your best, greatest enemies here in the spiritual path. What are they? Kama esha, Krodha esha. Anger. Terrible. It's like a tremendous whirlpool in the mind. A negative energy. At that moment when anger overtakes a person, all his understanding and knowledge and guidance and everything that was told to him, that person, this anger will totally override them and make that person do something. He might say something that is very harsh. He might hit somebody. He might, hurt somebody. Afterwards, he might say sorry so many times in this set, but he cannot ever undo that. So, Kama esha, Krodha esha. So, Krodha is anger, Kama is lust. Because that strengthens the identification with the physical body. In all this sadhana, when you're trying to lift the mind, we are trying to loosen our identification with the physical body. And so Sri Ramakrishna, he'll talk about what is Maya, Kavani and Kanchana. It says lust and greed. So one has to be very, very vigilant in spiritual life. There is no such thing as righteous indignation in spiritual life. Swami Vivekananda says. That means if you get angry, indignant with somebody, and you should not be able to justify, say, oh, that fellow was very not, it was all right, he needed to that type of treatment where he had to be scolded or somebody had to pull him up and all those things. That was necessary. No, that you might do that to somebody else, but more harm than the other person is the harm of this vritti that is created in our own mind. The important thing here is to understand that while we are dealing with the external world, every behavior, every thought and word and deed is creating a vritti. And we have to judge as a spiritual person, we have to judge the outcome of that activity in terms of the nature of the vritti that is created in the mind, because that is what we are going to take off. Sometimes we have very strong opinions and views about people whom we don't know. But just, for example, and they don't know us also. But when the moment we see them, people get very angry about them because or dislike them very much. For example, somebody is like a politician who doesn't have a very good character. You follow that. If he's a good guy, then every time you see that particular person comes in the news on TV, you feel happy if he's a good person. And if the other person whom you don't like so much, the moment you see or hear him talking on this and that, in your mind, a vritti comes. Not so good. Maybe you're angry or you're critical or whatever. Well, that person has nothing to do with you. But just by looking and watching and reacting in that way, we have added a negative vritti in our own mind and done more harm to ourselves, nothing for the other world person. Or we sent out a negative energy out in this world also. It goes out in the cosmic mind. That is, it catch somebody somewhere and work itself out. So one has to be very, very, very vigilant. Apramada. So what was that? So stherium, steadfastness. So the path of nivritti, your spirituality, is a steep climb. It's going against the flow. The society will be going mostly downwards. That's the easy path. Anyone can go down the river. It takes a lot of effort to go upwards. And on top of that, you will not find a lot of people supporting you. Everyone is going downwards. You are a lone ranger moving against the current. So if one doesn't have steadfastness, steadiness, then one can get swept off one's feet. So one has to quietly, silently, away from everyone, so to say, in one's own private space, sit down, isolate oneself from the society as much as possible, and churn the engine. Do your japa, do your meditation, do your contemplation. What are you doing? Creating these positive vrittis. The more we create, the richer we are spiritually. And that is the real working. That's why early in the morning, the spiritual teachers will say, get up in the morning, sit down and repeat the mantra so many times, meditate for so long, chant some mantras in praise of the divine, because the mantras contain, or stotras contain the divine qualities. God is kind, compassionate, pure, and all those types. As we bring those ideas to our mind also gets colored. All those vrittis are there. So we give our spiritual cleansing. Then when people go out in the world, if they have done a good job, they can maintain an undercurrent, and in between try to repeat the mantra, or as much as possible maintain a vigilance about the spiritual thing. But going out in the world, we collect some dust and dirt. Then we have to come back home, take a bath, and then have a mental bath also, which means doing your japa and meditation sincerely. All these things have to be done, because many people don't have the luxury of staying in a wonderful ashrama where you are in the company of spiritual people. The outside world does not come. We are out in this world where we have to deal with people of all types, and therefore extra effort is necessary to maintain the purity of this mind. Knowing that every thought, word, and deed is a vritti, is a negative vritti, it is something that's pulling us down. So we have to do so much more in the positive direction, so that ultimately the positive uplifting effect is more and down is less. And that's how we are navigating the world. It's not only things happening outside, more important is what is happening inside our own mind. That is where we have to be very, very vigilant, alert. If that alertness is there, then you'll find that that alertness, of course, comes from whom? It comes from your buddhi. Okay. And your buddhi is watching all these things. And as the mind becomes purer and purer, as you do your japa and meditation more and more and more, the sattva element keeps on increasing. At some point in the sattva element, you'll begin to feel this illumination, or this clarity, or the sharp sense of discrimination, subtle discrimination that's able to tell you what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad spiritually. And that is when we have got a good internal guide who is vigilant, who's watching. It will be like your inner consciousness telling us, don't do this, do this. If we listen to it, that voice of conscience becomes stronger. And if we ignore it, he will feel neglected and keep quiet. And therefore you lose your best friend because you don't listen to it. All right. So these verses now, if we can please reflect each one of them in your own way and say, certain things are told to be done. I could be doing something externally, physically or mentally, but what I'm interested to see is the result of that work in terms of the type of vritti that is being formed in my mind space. And from that point of view, you observe what are these. So, indriyartheshu vairagyam, anahankara evacha. Indriyartheshu, indriya artha. That means sense objects, vairagyam, dispassion for those things. That's very easy to understand. Drawing there, what does it mean? We're looking at that. I said, these are the indriya artheshu. Okay, these are the things in there. So vairagya means that mind dispassion for that. I'm not getting attracted to that. So that is a part of discipline in all spiritual teachings everywhere. Indriyarsa anahankar evacha. Absence of egotism or pride. Pride is that overall sense of identity of who I am. And if one thinks I'm great, I'm good, I'm wonderful, and all those things, then basically we are sort of satisfied with this little individuality and trying to preserve it, but not knowing that it's only a little wave. Maybe it wants to make the wave in bigger. The real greatness will come when the wave actually merges into the ocean. And therefore, Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. Sri Ramakrishna would say, not I, thou, thou, thou. So, Anahankara evacha. Sri Ramakrishna gives a little story. You see a young bull, a calf, when it's nice and strong, he makes this sound, humba, humba. And he says, this is saying, I am proud of itself. And because he has that pride, he has to go through a lot of suffering. A lot of suffering comes through because this pride is getting crushed around here and there. So what happens to the bull? Well, the farmer, he yokes him to the plow and works him in the farm, and the rain and sunshine gets whipped around and all that, does it all life. Still this ego does not go. Then he is slaughtered by the butcher, and his skin is used to make some drums and shoes, and people work on it and beat it mercilessly like people beat the drums, no end to its suffering. And then its entrails, its intestines, they make what you call this strings out of it. And this carding machine, where in India they use cotton to make pillows and mattresses, and if what you call cotton becomes all very, very compact, then they open it up and make it all very fluffy. So they use this bow type of thing where there's a vibrating string is there, and when they vibrate and touch the cotton spreads out fluffy. So it is when that entrail is tied into this carding machine and it is touched, then its sound becomes different. Tuhum, 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 tuhum. And Sri Ramakrishna says, look, that egotistic bull had to go all through this suffering before it comes to that realization to say, not I, thou, thou, thou. So this I that is failing is the ego. And then Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosh, Anudarshanam. So these are, Janma is birth, death, Jara, disease, old age, sorry. And Vyadhi is old, see? And Jara is aging. Okay, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, suffering. These 5 are things that happen to everyone who gets embodied. Dosh Anudarshanam. See that, realize that these things are having a birth, having a death, having a disease, becoming older. These are not something to rejoice and celebrate. Actually, these are things to be discarded, because these are the consequences of being embodied. The infinite pure being is now limited as a human being or any form. So, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosh, Anudarshanam. Having that, in this are taught, Janma and Mrityu are the 2 ends of it, and everything in between, okay, aging and disease and all the suffering that is in part of life. Look at that in totality as not something that we should seek again, but we should seek to avoid them, not come back to this world. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Doshanu, Darshanam. What will you do? Not wish anyone a happy birthday? So that is one of these disciplines in there. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanu darshanam. So in this way, so what happens in there? Then these are mostly related to this physical body level. Birth of the body, death of the body, disease of the body, aging of the body, and physical elements, or some mental elements can also be there. And these are the downs. I don't want them. They are to be dukkha dosh. Dosh means you see something wrong with that. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Maharishi Patanjali says, Dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. Viveki is a person of discrimination. Vivek Shakti, power of discrimination. People who are have the strong sense of discrimination are called Viveki. What do you say? Dukkham eva sarvam. Sarvam means everything. This whole experience being embodied, whatever apparently seems to be very nice, but from the spiritual perspective, this is not something to be desired for. Dukkham eva sarvam. Everything is fraught with suffering. Whole life is something like that. When that type of dispassion develops towards this life, being born, then the mind naturally loses all attachment to the things externally, loses its attachment to this physical body and individuality, and that is the starting a very important criteria in spiritual life, which is called vairagya. Dispassion for the world, dispassion for human life, or being born in there. When that becomes very intense, then the jiva chatpatata hai, wants to get out somehow, and that is called mumukshatvam. I want to be free. I want to be free. How do I get out of this and not come back? That is, that's a special thing that comes through our own sadhana and through divine grace. Human birth, durlabham trayam eva etat, deva anugraha hetukam, manushattam momokshattam mahapurush samsraya. Acharya Shankara in Vivek Chudamani says, durlabham, it's very rare and very difficult to get. Trayam eva, these three things. Deva anugraha hetukam, it comes through divine grace. What are they? Manushattam, human birth. What is special about human birth? Human beings have this power of buddhi, power of discrimination. They can understand what's happening there, make better decisions compared to animals, other living forms. So manushattam, mumukshatvam is what I talk about, wanting to be free. That this world is a prison house, this body is a prison house, this mind is a prison house. We are so miserable here compared to the ultimate nature of the highest truth. There, that's why. Otherwise, if we don't have any comparison with that, then everything is nice. In Fiji language, they will say, "Sab set hai." Everything is good by God's grace. I have got good health, good job, good money, everything is there. In other words, the silkworm is saying, I've got a nice cocoon. I'm very happy inside this. He doesn't know that he could have come out as a butterfly and be free. Mumukshatvam means the desire to be free. Manushatvam, mumukshatvam, mahapurush samshraya. To help in that journey, some great soul, some spiritual teacher comes and gives us a helping hand in that journey. If one gets that, then one is extremely fortunate in our spiritual life. So I hope this drawing and this model that we have now here diagrammatically, if you capture all those ideas and write down and put them there, hopefully it will give you a better understanding or comprehension of these teachings that are being taught here. And then next one is asakti manabhisanga putra dara grihadishu nitvam cha samachittatvam ista anista upapattishu. We'll take these next three verses in the next Thursday's class. All right. Anyone has any question or something? Even though we can do another 5 minutes. I'd like to unmute you all now.
Swamiji, I've got a question.
Mm.
When you said about, you referred about politicians, and there is a certain vritti that we experience if we do not like someone and we see them or hear about them. But people who hold power and they abuse them, that that creates certain vritti. It's not it's not natural, but probably it comes to us.
Yeah, if you watch them,
What should be our attitude towards those people who abuse power in a way that affects so many people
yes,
down the
they're
line?
right, but you're getting worked up. Does it make any change to him?
That does not, but at the end of the day, if
End
we
of
are
the
not
day, you have
angry,
done more harm to yourself by creating an undesirable brick in your mind.
but if we are not angry, we'll keep on listening and probably,
Hmm. So
not
you
doing.
think that anger is justified?
No, it's not justified, but probably it paves way for us to sort of vote a better person. I'm just
Well,
kind of.
what happens in your mind just now? You have created a vritti, has you made you a better person?
No, that does not make me a better person. But I
So,
mean,
so let's not, the way that's what you're talking is that's that type of example many people will give, justification or explanation. What I'm trying to point out in here, in terms of what is happening in your own mind space. When you understand that, try to make a judgment, a call based on that. If one is very, very careful or alert about one's spiritual life. Knowing that is the result that is happening in your mind space. And in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it is told, how to behave when we are interacting with these people. There it is, the prescription is be indifferent or nityam cha samachittatvam. Always try to maintain an equanimity of mind. In this, another, I think, 2 or 3 verses there. But definitely don't do any harm to yourself. You can work it out in so many other ways. That whether something is good or bad, it's our own perspective based on our own understanding. From another perspective, you might say it's the same divine being playing the role of a villain, but it's all a play. And the moment you bring that idea to your mind, you find that negativity automatically takes away, or it's not real. It is only a play of the divine. There's so many other ways to attend to that, but definitely you don't need to get angry and do harm to yourself. Creating a vritti without that's harmful to you, whatever your explanation and justification, is not spiritually conducive for the person.
thank you so much.
All right. So use this model that might say helps us, maybe see things in a different way. All right. Okay. So let's call it off. Conclude. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat.